Like you said, I'm Kevin Burns, Dallas County Master Gardener. We're part of AgriLife Extension, if you're not familiar with that. It's run through Texas A&M. Every county in the U.S. has a Master Gardener program, and they're all run through Extension Services. And every state has a land-grant college, and that's how it all evolves. And gardeners tend to be really nice people, regardless of politics and all that kind of good stuff. So if you're looking for something to do and meet a lot of really nice people, we're always looking for volunteers. And then that's our mission, to educate good people. Now, I went to UT, and A&M's a great school, but all my fonts are in burnt orange, just to hook 'em orange, so just to get back at them. No maroon here in my presentations. So we're going to talk about wicked plants today, and you might say, what's a wicked plant? Well, I read this book by this lady, oh gosh, I can't remember her name now, but she used to be the garden editor of the San Francisco Chronicle. And she wrote a book called Wicked Plants. I read it. I'm like, oh, this would be a great Master Gardener presentation, commercial too. Anyway, so they're plants that are deadly, illegal, intoxicating, dangerous, and either destructive or invasive. And there are a lot of them. So we're just going to touch on a few today. Since we have a really big group, let's hold questions to the end, or we'll be here all day because I can talk. So let's do the deadly ones first, because that's my favorite. This is aconite. It grows in northern Europe. It gets about 3 to 4 feet tall. Typically grows in areas that are like in highland meadows, like just above where the tree line stops. It comes in different colors. It's one of the most dangerous plants on the planet. You can get the seeds for it. It doesn't grow in Texas natively, and it's probably too hot and too dry here for it. But the nice thing about North Texas is you can grow anything here. It's just time, money, and effort. I'm a lazy, cheap gardener, so this is not something I put in my yard. And if you're going to grow it, it's highly recommended that you wear rubber gloves while even handling this plant. The toxins can be absorbed through your skin. This plant causes cardiac arrest, so not fun. And people have been using aconite to kill other people for a really long time. They've found traces of aconite on Bronze Age tools and swords and arrows and stuff, so they've been using it since then. In fact, in ancient Rome, if you were growing aconite and they caught you, you could actually be sentenced to death because they knew you were growing it to kill somebody. In World War II, Nazi guys, the stormtroopers, the SS guys, they would actually make a tincture out of aconite and dip their bullets in it. So if the bullet didn't kill you, this will. It's that deadly. I mean, it's seriously deadly. And people even use it in literature. Any Harry Potter fans in here? I am. If you remember, Professor Snape used to make a potion so Professor Lupin wouldn't turn into a werewolf, and aconite was one of those ingredients. In fact, it's sometimes called monk's hood. It's got several different names, but this is really not something that you probably want to have in your garden. In fact, in 1856 in Scotland, in a village called Dingwall, the local parish priest was doing a little shindig for his parishioners, sent his housekeeper out to dig up some horseradish root for the roast beef. Guess what? She got aconite by mistake, killed 7 people, and put the rest of the village in the hospital. I mean, this is some bad stuff. Okay, this is the castor bean plant. I think it's really kind of cool because if you put it in your garden, with those big leaves, it kind of gives you that Jurassic Park feel. And it was very popular in the United States to use as a plant in gardens up until about 1950, 55, and for some reason, it's just not popular anymore. Every part of this plant is toxic. If you've ever heard of the poison ricin, if you remember somebody sent some to President Obama when he was in office, it comes from this plant. Ricin, sorry about that. ricin is a protein, or the poison ricin is a protein, and it gets in and basically it shuts your liver down. So if you ingest this plant or parts of the plant or the seeds or whatever, 3 little seeds, which they look exactly like pinto beans. Do not mix them up because 3 seeds will put you down permanently. That's how poisonous this stuff is. The good news is, if you know you've ingested it and you get to the doctor in time, they can do stuff to get it out of your body. But if you don't, you're going to have a very painful death. You're going to have a lot of gastric problems. Your liver's going to shut down. As soon as your liver shuts down, your kidneys shut down. And as soon as that happens, then everything else just starts going. It's like a big chain reaction. The plant's actually native to Africa and can get 25 or 30 feet tall. Probably won't get that tall here in the Dallas area. If you notice right here, there's some seed pods coming, and they're getting ready to turn color. They're still green here. See, I don't know if you can see it from back in the cheap seats, but there's itty bitty little pink things starting to show on those pods, and that's what one looks like. My friend, I have a master gardener friend who actually likes these and grows them, and I'm going to be growing them next spring because she gave me a bunch of seeds. But here you can see it's all the way up to the eaves on our house. So what's that, 8-10 feet, something like that. So, and it's a pretty plant. Gets in purple with the pink flowers. Here's a close-up of the flowers. And the cool thing about the flowers is they're really soft and fuzzy, like little balls, but they turn hard when the seeds have been pollinated and they're starting to ripen. And then those little soft, fuzzy things turn like little needles. And I kind of think that's Mother Nature's way of telling critters, don't eat this thing because it's going to stick in your mouth. And then inside each one of those little balls, there's going to be 2 or 3 little seeds. So, it's kind of a cool plant. If you have me back sometime to speak, I'll let you know if they grow well. Okay, this is deadly nightshade. Nightshade grows all over the world. I don't think there's any, maybe Antarctica it doesn't grow. But we actually have a Texas nightshade. I've got a ranch down in the hill country, and I do my best to keep it eradicated. It has these really interesting look little flowers. But then the berries are kind of yellow and the leaves are a little bit more silvery than what's here. Deadly nightshade is actually native to Europe, and it's kind of an interesting thing. The berries are black, and it's an ugly plant, trust me on this one. Extremely poisonous. All parts of the plant are poisonous, with the seeds being the most poisonous. May or may not kill you depending on your tolerance for the toxic elements that are in there. 2 major ingredients that are in nightshade. One of them is called scopolamine. Sometimes doctors use it for people with different problems. And then the other one's atropine sulfate. If you ever go to the eye doctor and they dilate your eyes, atropine sulfate is what they use. So they've probably made synthetically nowadays, but originally it came from this plant. In fact, during the Renaissance, which is what, the 1500s, in Italy, women would make a tincture out of the nightshade and put the drops in their eyes to make their pupils dilate, because back then, trends change, but back then, big dark eyes were the sexy thing to have. So, the other interesting thing that I find totally fascinating is that atropine sulfate is also the antidote for organic phosphate-based nerve agents like sarin and VX and that stuff. And the military guys carry little EpiPens of it, to inject if they come exposed to that. I just find it fascinating that a plant that's toxic also is the antidote for something that's even more toxic. I just find that kind of fascinating. And of course, if you have this in your pasture or whatever, you want to definitely get rid of it, because any of your livestock would eat this. They probably won't. Most critters know not to eat stuff, unlike humans. But I try to get it all out of the pasture, because you never know. Some animals are smarter than others. Okay, this is death cama. It is native to the United States. It grows in the Pacific Northwest, Montana, Idaho. It grows up in the alpine areas, like above the tree line. And from a historical perspective, it's kind of interesting. This plant wasn't known until Lewis and Clark, if you remember that from history class. I think it was in 1805, went to go find the Pacific Passageway. Of course, there wasn't one, but they didn't know that. Anyway, so they're hunkered down. They're in the middle of a big blizzard. Things are going horribly south for them. They're starving. They start foraging. Well, guess what? This plant gets about 3 to 4 feet tall, has a bulb like an onion. They thought they were getting wild onions. They got death cama. 5 guys died. They decided to eat their horses instead after that. So if you are a forager, don't do it unless you really know what you're doing, because you can kill yourself. Okay, this is the suicide tree. This tree probably kills more people than any other plant in the world, and it doesn't grow here, fortunately. If you notice, it looks a lot like oleander. Well, they're in the same family, and oleander's poisonous if you didn't know that. But this one's really poisonous. The plant grows in marshy areas. It's native to Burma, which is now called Myanmar. It likes swampy, coastal kind of things. It gets 30 to 40 feet tall. Again, all parts of the plant are poisonous, but most people who want to use this for nefarious purposes usually grab the seeds or the flowers and grind them up and pound them and make them into a little paste. And most poisons are alkaloid based, so they're extremely bitter. It's like eating cocoa without any sugar. And it's just, Well, to cover that taste up, they put it in curries and stuff so you can't taste it. And the other cool part about this is the toxin, and it starts out with that Cerbaria and then has about 27 other letters after it, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. But it doesn't show up on your regular tox screenings for the pathologists. They have to specifically go to look for this poison. And if there's no, like if here in the United States, nobody would ever look for that because it doesn't grow here. So if you were to go to India or Myanmar and you get some of this and you really want to take somebody out, this is the plant to get, because you're probably going to get away with it. Anyway, enough of that. So we'll talk about a few dangerous plants now. Okay, this is tobacco, probably the most dangerous plant in the world. The World Health Organization estimates between the year 1900 and 2000, 100 million people in the world were directly affected by tobacco use, whether it was somebody dying or they got cancer and they made it through, or family members or whatever. So it's pretty, that's pretty impressive. That's a lot of people. Obviously, tobacco has been, there's an ornamental tobacco you can get. It's called nicotiana. It looks similar to these plants. Tobacco, obviously, is grown for the leaves because you want to cut them up and make cigarettes or cigars or whatever, or dip. And the flowers are a little different. On the ornamental tobacco flowers, the flowers tend to be more elongated trumpets and kind of a white color instead of the pink color. And then the leaves are narrow on the ornamental stuff instead of really wide. People have been hybridizing stuff for a long time. Inside each one of these little flower seed pods is about 300 to 500 seeds. They're real tiny, like little mustard seeds, if you will. And there's 2 main ingredients in tobacco that'll do you in. Nicotine, which is a cardiac stimulant, causes your blood pressure to go up, your your vessels to constrict. It's addicting. It's actually more addicting than cocaine, believe it or not. There's actually things in your brain called nicotine receptors. And when the 2 molecules come together, you get a little buzz off of it, which is why people like to smoke. Unfortunately, it makes you want to do it again and again and again and again. If you just smoked a cigarette every now and then, it wouldn't be a big deal, but most people get addicted. They're smoking 10, 20, 30, 40 a day, and that's when bad things start happening. And it's not, the nicotine can cause you to have some heart issues, but the really bad stuff is the tar. It can actually go in and screw up the DNA in your cells, and this is what gives you cancer. My best friend died of small cell carcinoma. He was a 2-pack-a-day guy. The kind of cancer he had, only people who smoke or live with smokers get. He was asymptomatic until he was already stage 4. So by the time they figured out he had a tumor, it had already wrapped around his heart, totally inoperable. So they ended up doing all the other usual things when they can't operate. They did some chemotherapy, and they did some targeted radiation. And let me tell you about the targeted radiation. Not fun. Small cell carcinoma, they know a lot about it because so many people smoke. Once it's done with screwing up your lung, it will metastasize, and it always goes to your brain and your liver. So they preemptively shot my friend's liver and his brain with radiation to help prevent it. And by the time they were done with him, he couldn't even compute a tip. So something to think about. If you don't smoke, if you don't smoke, don't start. If you do smoke, quit. I used to be in the trade show business. I did a lot of shows and stuff for drug companies. And believe it or not, there is a oncology show every year where all the drug makers go and show all the oncologists all the new drugs they've came out with. I was doing one for Astra Squib, I think. And these guys, they're all the drug companies all merge with each other and share data and all this stuff. But basically, I was talking to one of the guys because I'm a former smoker, and he was telling me, they've done a lot of studies. If you quit smoking cigarettes by the time you're 40 and you weren't a heavy smoker, like less than a pack a day, you're probably going to be okay. But the people who smoke more than 20 cigarettes a day and don't quit by 40, you're probably going to get cancer, unless you're just really lucky. Enough of the negativity. Okay, this is Jimson weed. I actually grow this in my yard. It's a great plant for your gardens. It's also called datura. Every part of the plant is poisonous, but not going to kill you. Have these flowers that open up, and I'm going to move it up ahead. That's what the flowers look like when they're in bloom. They're really pretty. They open up at night and smell just like gardenias. It's an awesome plant to have in your yard. It's also the host plant for, I want to say, the hummingbird moth. So that's what they lay their eggs on it and do the larvae and the pupa and all that stuff. So anyway, these guys, not going to kill you, but might make you wish you were dead. It's extremely hallucinogenic. It's kind of, I've been told it's like LSD on a bad trip. Some Native Americans and stuff used it. Let's see, there's a close-up of the flower. Your pollinators all love it. It's an annual here in Texas, but it acts like a perennial because it's prolific. Each flower will produce a seed pod like that, and there's like 500 seeds inside each one. Now, I took this picture at my house in the hill country. I planted 3 of these guys that were roughly quart-sized plants that I took out of my yard here in Dallas. And 10 years later, they are 6 feet front to back, 30 feet left to right, and about 5 feet tall. And that's with 3 little plants the size of a quart. So, and they will show up everywhere. This is the gift that keeps giving. So, in fact, my original one was given to me as a gift by a fellow master gardener. She's like, "You want this?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll take it." I never turn down free plants. Anyway, great plant. In fact, from a historical perspective, if you remember back before the American Revolution, there was this thing called Bacon's Rebellion, which is one of the things that got the colonists all upset because the British came in and started quartering troops in people's homes. Nobody wants strangers in their homes. Well, they got together and they made a bunch of stew out of this stuff. And basically the British soldiers were on a trip for like 3 days and ended up pulling all the people out of their house. And then recently, up in the Oklahoma City area, a family decided to go out and go camping and go foraging. Well, guess what? They made a stew out of this stuff themselves. They all four ended up in the hospital. Not to die, but wishing they were dead. You know, heart's racing, the eyeballs are all, your sight's all messed up, and you're thinking all of these weird thoughts. So anyway, not a good thing. But it's a great plant for your yard. Oh, and a lot of people ask me, well, why would you want to put poisonous plants in your yard? There's little kids and there's, animals might eat it. Well, I have never, ever I've got a lot of poisonous plants in my yard. And believe it or not, you probably do too and just don't know it. But I've never seen critters eat anything that they weren't supposed to eat. And as far as humans, that's Darwin working his magic. Okay, this is the Mackinaw tree. It's actually native to the Caribbean. It grows just like the one in the photograph here. It grows, it's swampy, salty, it doesn't care about the water. It grows on the edge of the beach, that sort of thing. It's an ugly tree, and you can tell, like even the photograph, that the winds are always in the same direction. If you go down the Caribbean, very rarely does the wind change direction. In fact, they have like in Aruba and some of the further south ones, they actually have these trees. I think they're called divvy trees, but they grow and then they lean over because the winds are always blowing that same way, and they kind of lean towards the way the wind's blowing. Well, this is probably doing kind of the same thing. And if you go down there, excuse me just a second here, my Zyrtec's kicking in and I'm getting dry all of a sudden. They'll have these signs on them. The tree produces little apple-looking things, extremely toxic. Do not stand under the tree when it's raining. Do not park your car under the tree. This tree contains acid. It will eat the paint off your car. It will burn the entire lining of your esophagus and kill you. It is extremely toxic tree. Apparently the apples taste pretty good, is what I've been told. And then all of a sudden you're about a bite and a half in and you're like, man, he's got a little pepper feeling to him. And then it just gets hotter and hotter and hotter as it's burning its way all the way down. So not fun. That's what the apple looks like. So, it's a pretty ordinary looking thing, but you definitely want to stay away from these guys. As soon as I heard about it can remove the paint from your car, I'm like, oh, this is not good. Okay, believe it or not, corn can mess you up. Yes. Corn, everybody knows about corn, so I won't talk about the plant. Where I grew up in Indiana, the corn would get, 12, 14 feet tall. It doesn't get quite that tall down here. But, corn is probably the number one it's the number 2 crop in the world behind soybeans. Every single thing that we use as human beings has got either petroleum or corn product to it. Plastics are made from corn. I mean, it is glues. I mean, all kinds of stuff are made from corn. And it tastes good. Well, corn's native to this hemisphere. So when Columbus and all those other Spanish guys first came to the New World, they discovered corn, they took it back, and they're like, yes, because in Europe at the time, you were either royalty or you were a serf. There was no middle class really. And royalty is always looking for a good way to feed the peasants because a full peasant is a happy peasant. And people don't really, didn't want hungry people because revolutions are bad for royalty. Well, what they didn't realize, corn's super easy to grow. It tastes good, people love it, and people started eating a lot of corn. Well, a new disease came upon them, and it's called pellagra. And that's what it looks like. Pellagra is Spanish for sour skin, and basically corn has an enzyme in it that will prevent your body from absorbing niacin, which is vitamin B6. And if you don't get your niacin, bad things happen to your skin and your, your immune system, and it will eventually kill you. And people were worried about this. Believe it or not, this problem did not get solved until 1943 when a guy at Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C., or it's actually Bethesda, Maryland, figured out what was going on with the corn, because there were 4 million people in the United States that had pellagra at the time. And they were all poor people in the deep South and in Appalachia. And the reason why is because they didn't eat meat. They were living off corn or squirrels, whatever little bit of meat they could get. Because meat is your biggest source for vitamin B6. And well, poor people don't get meat. Meat's, considered a luxury. Now you don't hardly ever see this because, well, here we're fortunate in the United States. While we have a lot of problems, they're all first world problems, not like this. And so I just had a Rick Perry moment. My mind just went. I hate that. Yes. Oh, so back to the corn. So. Is there, no, I don't have another one. So anyway, on the corn, what I find totally fascinating is the Mayans, the Incas, and all the people, Aztecs, that were all in this part of the world at the time. They were eating lots of corn, but they didn't get the disease. And even though these people had not invented the wheel, they figured it out. If you take your corn and you soak it in lye, basically you turn it into hominy, it deactivates the enzyme, and they never had pellagra. I just find that fascinating. The wheel is something that we all take for, the wheel is used for everything. Your tables around, the wheels on your car around, makes life, being a human, so much easier. And these guys didn't have it, but yet they had that. I don't know, kind of cool. And then the red kidney bean. Now, we've all heard the little song, beans, beans, the magical fruit. Well, it is true. There is a chemical in beans, and that's the name of it, and that's what it looks like. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Phytohemagglutinin. But anyway, this is what gives you the magical fruit properties of the beans. Now, it's really bad in red kidney beans. There's a super high concentration. So if you are a bean eater, and I am one, I love beans, if you're using dry beans and you're soaking your beans, make sure you discard all that water that you've soaked them in. Do not use that for cooking because it leaches out into the water. And the more you can rinse and soak your beans, the less problems you will have with this particular enzyme. The cool part about the enzyme is it is deactivated at 160 degrees. So if you're using canned beans, you're safe because if you didn't know it, when you can something, it gets hot as part of the process. But and then red kidney beans being the worst, I'm actually not a fan of the red kidney bean. I prefer like limas and white beans and that sort of thing. But that's just me. I know a lot of people like to make 3-bean salad, and the kidney beans are always in there. So just be careful using that stuff. It's not going to kill you, but it'll make you, lots of, if you got a good dose of it, it could cause you a lot of digestive problems and, all the flatulence and all the things that go with that sort of thing. So be careful with your beans. Now the fun part, the illegal plants. Okay, this is peyote. It is a cactus. It does not have spines like regular cactus, and it does flower. It blooms in March through May, depending on the weather. It actually grows here in Texas. If you go down to the Rio Grande, Starr County, Jim Hogg County, I forget the other one that's down there. But anyway, those 3 counties, if you go out looking around, you can find this, maybe. It's become really popular, so it's actually becoming almost like an endangered species. Native Americans have been using peyote for literally thousands and thousands of years as part of their ceremonies and rituals as far as their religion go. Peyote, it doesn't get very big. These things are about like 6 inches in diameter. They like hillsides with a lot of caliche, rocky, where nothing else will grow. That's where you're going to find these guys. As far as the effects of peyote, You can smell color. You can see music. You can hear silence. Typically, you'll eat these things. A lot of people will mix it with food. Just like some of the poisons that I talked about earlier, these things, all the hallucinogenic chemicals are also alkaloids, so they have a really bitter taste. So most people will, they cut these things up into buttons, kind of like these little wedge, kind of like what nature's done there. And then you eat them. I've never done this, so I really don't know much about the dosage, but I'm thinking you eat 3 or 4 of these little buttons mixed in with some food, and you're probably going to have a nice little 6 to 8 hour trip. Psychedelic drugs were, as far as like peyote, was really popular in the 1950s. You've probably heard of the Beat Generation. It was a group of guys out in California that started it all. Ken Kesey was one of them. He wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He supposedly got his inspiration for the novel and later on the movie, which was a great movie, by the way, from taking peyote while he was working as a security guard at a mental institution. Yes. Another one of the Beat Generation guys was a guy named Allen Ginsberg. He was a beat poet. I actually was an English major until I decided, in college, until I decided I wanted to get a job when I got graduated and changed the business. But we read Ginsberg's most famous poem called The Howl in a class I took. It is 700 pages of complete gibberish. I don't recommend it, reading it, unless you just really want to do it. But supposedly Allen Ginsberg wrote it while he was, I forget the name of the hotel, but there's a hotel in downtown San Francisco where the guys out front wear these Beefeater uniforms and stuff. I've actually stayed there. I can't think of the name of it. There you go. Yes, the St. Francis Hotel. He supposedly had his apartment across the street and was looking out the window watching those guys in the Beefeater uniforms while he was writing this poem. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, Tom Wolfe, he's written a lot of books, Bonfire of the Vanities and all that, but he's got one called The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. And it's all about these guys, and he actually spent a few months with them riding around on their little bus, going around California and Oregon, doing LSD and peyote and all this. And so if you're interested in that, anyway, hallucinogenic drugs kind of died out, and then back in the 70s, they've made a recurrence. There's a guy named Carlos Castaneda. He was a anthropologist at UCLA University, and he did his dissertation on a guy named Don Juan Mateo, which he was a bruja, like a sorcerer, witch doctor, shaman, whatever you want to call him. And he's written several books about his adventures meeting this guy and interviewing, and then Don Juan actually got him to do drugs with him. And then they did all these little trips with peyote and mescaline and that sort of thing. Nobody knows if it's really true or not, if he just made all this up. But anyway, and Carlos is dead now, but there is a whole society out there, and they've got a website, and you can join where you can go and practice his practices. So anyway, enough on peyote. Okay, this is psilocybin. It's a mushroom. It grows everywhere in the world except for Antarctica. There's like 100 different species of magic mushrooms, and most of them do not have the big red spots on them like Alice in Wonderland. Most of them are going to look like this guy on the left here. They're really short. They're not very big mushrooms. Again, unless you know what you're doing, this is a good way to kill yourself because there's mushrooms that look just like these mushrooms that are poisonous. So, but psilocybin, in fact, there's a whole bunch of talk right now on the internet, and there's been some TV shows and stuff about people microdosing the psilocybin to help them with depression. They got all kinds of drugs for that. Why would you want to do that? To me, if you want to take psilocybin, you want to get stoned. So anyway, psilocybin's a little different than the peyote. the trip's not going to last quite as long. The effects aren't going to be quite as intense, but you can have some severe hallucinations. It's best if you're going to try to do this or take some of the stuff that you do it with somebody else the first time. Don't be by yourself because you will not be in your right mind afterwards. Again, you're going to eat this or chop them up, and a lot of times they're sold like freeze dried. So you're going to like add it to make a tea out of it, or add hot water or whatever, or mix it in with your food. About 30 minutes later, you will take off. I've only tried it once in my life, and it was interesting. Not something you'd want to do all the time. Definitely do not get behind the wheel of a car. You're not going to be able to drive. Yeah, barbecue, somebody say? Oh yeah, don't barbecue. Don't do anything with flammable liquids or any kind of heavy machinery. Basically, turn the TV on and set the mood in the room. Draw your shades. Get a beer or a cocktail and just kind of hang out and enjoy life. That's the best way to go with this stuff. Okay, now we'll talk about some intoxicating things. I used to put marijuana in the illegal thing part, but since so many places have legalized it now, Texas will be the last state to legalize it. I don't know why, but we're tough on marijuana here. Marijuana grows just about anywhere. It's in the hemp family. People have been using marijuana, oh gosh, literally 6, 7, 8,000 years now. They actually found some baskets that were woven hemp in some cave down in South Texas, and they had marijuana inside the baskets. That God knows how old it was. They carbon dated this stuff, but it was over 3,000 years old. Easy to grow. You hear a lot of people, growing it. A lot of times people who grow it to sell, they'll rent a house and grow it hydroponically in the house, and usually they get caught because their electric bills are sky high. I mean, they're 10 times what everybody else's in the neighborhood is. And then there's the smell. Good quality marijuana smells like a skunk. The higher the THC, and that's THC, if you're not familiar, is the active psychoactive ingredient. Its formal name is delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. That's what you want. All the CBD8, CBD7, you don't want any of that stuff because you're not going to get stoned. It's the CBD9 that you want, and which is what's illegal, of course. The plant can get 30 feet tall. It's a hermaphroditic plant, so the plant can be male, female, or switch back and forth. If you're growing marijuana to get high, you want female plants because the flower's where most of the stuff is. You don't want any male plants because you don't want any pollination going on, because then you get a bunch of seeds and nobody wants the seeds. In fact, if you remember Cheech and Chong back in the 70s had this little song, "No stems, no seeds that you don't need. Acapulco Gold is." Anyway, so you want female plants, and they're really sticky. It's like the tar, and it's just like got super glue all over it. Anyway, if you haven't smoked marijuana, you get a feeling of elation and well-being. You get the munchies. Which is probably the most popular thing. Your sense of time changes, which is a good reason why you shouldn't be driving a vehicle. All these states that have legalized marijuana, well, they haven't quite figured out what to do with all the people getting arrested while driving while they're stoned, because it's really, like they've got a blow thing because the cops can say, oh, you're at 0.1 or whatever. Can't really do that with marijuana. So like in Colorado, I know for a fact that traffic accidents are up since they legalized marijuana there. But what else am I going to tell you about this? The World Health Organization estimates that 25 million people in the U.S. Use marijuana on a daily basis, and over 100 million people worldwide. So it's extremely popular. It also can affect your memory, especially short-term memory loss. and you also have a lot of Rick Perry moments when you smoke marijuana, especially while you're smoking. And it's also got a lot of tar and stuff, just like tobacco. So, you know, all these people think they're smoking pot instead of tobacco, and it's healthy. No, I don't think so. I'm up on the fence whether they should legalize it. I don't know. Young people should not be smoking pot. That's the truth. It messes with your brain. It also changes the way you think about things, and I'm talking permanent change. It makes you more relaxed, makes your outlook on life a little different. It also inhibits your drive. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but anyway, enough on that. Okay, this is henbane. It's in the same family of plants as okra, and it's in the nightshade family, basically. Okra, potatoes, tomatoes, they're all in the same family. As you can see, this is an extremely ugly plant. The leaves are really hairy. The flowers just, I mean, who wants that in their yard? But back in the Greek times, they used to make brews out of this, and especially if you were worshiping Apollo, they were big on henbane at Apollo land. And the priestesses and other acolytes of Apollo would drink this stuff, and then all sorts of oracles would be pronounced. Who knew if any of them actually ever came true, but everybody had a good time. The other thing is, before people started using hops to make beer, they used this. So beer back in the olden days actually did have a little kick to it. But now they use hops. The flavor's better. Everybody likes beer better. And it's kind of going away. This plant's native to like Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Belarus, Romania, Bulgaria, that sort of thing. Okay, this is wormwood. It's in the Artemisia family. I actually have a bunch of Artemisia growing in my backyard, the Texas variety. This stuff doesn't really like Texas. It's a little hot here for it. But wormwood's been around for a really long time. Back in pre-1800s, people used to put it in their closets and under their mattresses and in drawers and stuff to keep bed bugs and mites and lice and all that stuff out of their clothing. It's got a really pungent, kind of funky smell. Well, this particular variety, which is Artemisia absthenium, is used to make the liqueur absinthe. And if you're not familiar with absinthe, it's kind of a chartreuse color. It tastes like licorice. And there's a whole thing about, they've got special glasses for it with a special spoon. And basically you put your absinthe in the bottom. Then you put this special spoon that's made to sit on top of the glass. You put a sugar cube in it and you dump water over it, melting the sugar. It goes down and then you enjoy your cocktail. Well, absinthe was outlawed in 1909 because they thought it was more toxic than it was. And a guy in Switzerland literally killed his entire family, and they blamed it on the alcohol. Well, guess what? They find out, 70 years later, that wasn't really the case. He was intoxicated, but it wasn't because of this stuff. He's just a mean drunk. And so it's legal again now. You can go out and buy it. I actually went out and bought a bottle just so I could see what it was like, and it's not my thing. If you like Ouzo and Pernod and all those other licorice drinks, you might like it. This one's got it's got a slightly different taste than the others. I actually like Ouzo, but this stuff I don't care for. What else can I tell you about it? Oh, if you ever go to New Orleans, there's the oldest bar in the oldest continuously running bar in the United States is down there. It's called the Absinthe Room. It's right off Bourbon Street, and you can go and sit down there and sit where President Jackson and Mark Twain, and they've got pictures of all the famous people on the walls and stuff, but that have actually drank there or been there. So it's a fun place to go. So a little bit of history for you. Okay, now let's talk about some destructive stuff. Oh, on time, excellent. This is kudzu. If you're not familiar with it, if you've ever flown into Hartfield Airport or Jackson Hartfield in Atlanta, and you see all this lush green out there, well, some of it is the pine trees, but the rest of it's the kudzu. Kudzu is actually native to Japan. They brought it over here in the late 1800s to be cattle fodder. And it's great cattle fodder. Cattle love it. It's good for them. It's got all these good ingredients. Well, guess what? Japan's got a cool climate. They brought this stuff to central Georgia. The lessons of the well-intentioned. Kudzu in Japan is not a big deal. They like it. They do things with it. Here, it is a major, major mess. Because of the 40-degree temperature change by where it grows in Japan and the time in Georgia, it has gone crazy. And it has worked its way. It's actually on the Texas border now. There are places in Texas that are becoming overrun by kudzu. You know, in what, like just a little over 100 years, it's made it from central Georgia all the way over here. Nothing kills it. It grows about a foot a day. You put Roundup on it and it goes, that tastes good, give me some more. About the only way to keep it under control is to put a herd of goats out there, but you know, who wants goats everywhere? This is really a tough plant to get rid of once it's established. On the positive side, they're actually doing some research now up at Harvard that they found a chemical compound within this plant they think might help people with addiction issues. So maybe it has a little bit of a benefit for society, but it's a mess. I used to have a client that was in Atlanta, and they had a nice new facility and everything. They were on the southeast side in kind of an old industrial area, and the building next to them looked like something out of a Tim Burton movie. I mean, every inch of surface, from the parking lot to the telephone poles and the entire building was covered in kudzu. It was just, every time I went there, I was just fascinated by it. It takes over everything. Okay, this is the water hyacinth. It's actually technically illegal to import these into Texas and most of the southern states. It's native to Southeast Asia. It grows on waterways there. Does fine. A lot of people like to put it. It has a beautiful flower, as you can see, and the flower will actually shoot up 2 or 3 feet above the water. But this plant grows. You thought kudzu was crazy. This plant will grow a yard a day, 3 feet every day, 3 feet. And what happens is it will cover the entire surface of a water area. And when that happens, sunlight doesn't get through to the bottom. Well, all the plants that are in the waterway die, that are underneath the water hyacinth. And then when they start happening, they start decomposing. Well, that screws up the chemical and oxygen balance in the water. And then all your fish start dying. And then you get a big cesspool that's filled with nothing but mosquitoes. So, bad stuff. The state of Florida spends about $2 billion a year on water hyacinth eradication. I mean, it's so bad over there because so many people have let it get out. Now, if you live in an area where it's cold in the wintertime, like say Wisconsin, Minnesota, not a big deal because it kills the plant back and you have to put it in every year. But down here where it's warm, these guys go crazy. And it literally costs billions and billions of dollars in the United States every year to get rid of this. I was giving this speech to a garden club the other day, and one of the ladies, her and her husband had a lake house property out in East Texas, and this got into their lake, and every homeowner that lived on the lake had to shell out $15,000 because they had to drain the lake, let it sit empty for 2 years, clean all the vegetation out before they fill it back in. So, yeah. Bad stuff. And then you've got a lake house with no lake, at least for a couple of years till they get it back to the square. So this is some bad stuff. I think that's the last slide. Yes. So as a Dallas County Master Gardener, we also have a help desk, and if you email us at that address, we can get all your gardening, or we'll try to get all your gardening questions answered. We used to have a help desk with a phone and all that stuff, and when COVID hit, that went away, and then the powers that be decided we're going to do everything remotely from now on. So it's all done via email now. I personally liked working the help desk talking to people, but then I like to talk to people. So, but anyway, that's the end of my presentation today, and we are right on time. Anybody have questions or anything?
If
yes,
you have
ma'am.
questions, let me bring the microphone to you because we can.
Oh, hold on just a second. He's going to get you a microphone. Sir, there's a question over here. Oh, well. Oh, this lady over here in the striped shirt.
There was something.
Close, just hold it close.
Oh. There's something that looked like it looked like moonvine, exactly like moonvine. But was it? I mean, is that poisonous?
Oh, I know. Well, there's. The datura is also called devil's trumpet, but there's a plant called angel's trumpet that looks very similar.
Yeah.
It was datura.
Oh, a vine that's moonflower. Now, I haven't seen the moonvine flower, but oh, cool. Yeah, but I don't think that one's poisonous. Yeah. If anybody else have any questions or anything? Oh, here we go.
I was wondering about the illegal plants. Is there actually laws on the books to prevent people from planting those?
Oh, yeah. In fact, like if you get caught with marijuana, well, in Dallas County, if you have less than an ounce, it's probably going to be like a $500 fine or something. It's not a big deal. Now, if you're in Williamson County, you're probably going to go to jail. Just because out in the middle of nowhere, Texas, they're pretty strict about it. But if you get caught growing stuff, that is a whole nother animal. They will come and the federal government will come in, they will confiscate your property, they will confiscate your bank account. They frown on growing drugs. Oh, you mean?
Like peyote, is that illegal?
Yes. Now, Native Americans can possess peyote because they use it in their religious stuff. In fact, I have a friend of mine who's a Cherokee. He lives here in Dallas, but he goes up to Tahlequah about once every 6 weeks, and they have a peyote party. He calls it a sweat, but they go to the teepee and they do the same. But basically, they're going to go get high. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Is castor oil made from the castor bean?
Yes, it is. The castor bean is basically crushed and all that, and when they process it, they remove the ricin from the castor oil. Yes.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
The datura, you said it reseeds freely.
Oh, yes.
Would deadheading keep it under control?
Well, yes. If you can keep the seed pods from forming, you're going to be a step ahead. Now, I let it go because it's actually when it's a small plant, it's pretty easy to pull. It's when it gets big, and I mean, like the one I have down in the hill country. It's been down there 12 years now. They're big, woody, thick branches and stems and stuff. But if you keep it under control, well, the thing is the blooms only last one night. So if you can go out, and I typically wait till the seed pods form and then pull them off just because it's easier. But yes, you can keep it under control. But you got to be diligent. I mean, like every single day. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is the angel's trumpet, the brugmansia, is that as poisonous as
No.
the datura?
No,
And
it's
what
not.
part?
They look very similar. The flowers look very similar, but the actual plant itself, the part of the plant, doesn't look anything alike. And just the flowers and the smell on the flowers is different too. But it's not a poisonous plant. No. Yes, ma'am. Yes. It's in foxglove.
And is that deadly?
Yes. If you, foxglove, there's another one, delphiniums, they all have a little bit of digitalis, but foxglove is a lot of digitalis. If you ingest foxglove, it can kill you. Digitalis is also used for heart conditions, but if you don't need it and you get it, your heart doesn't like that either. So, any other questions or anything? Well, I think I'll get out of y'all's hair and let y'all do whatever.